my career started in retail banking. I joined the grad scheme at Lloyds TSB, and I did it like a lot of people at that age. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't even know the arena in which I wanted to operate. And I kind of figured that if I go for a job at a big company on the grad scheme somewhere, then hopefully I could find something, along the way. I may not know what I want, but I know what I don't want. And just that knowledge of, I don't want to be here at his age. He was like mid-40s at the time. I don't want to be in my mid-40s in a role where I'm hating it, but I'm sticking around and feel stuck because of the pension. It created a reaction in me. I thought, I've got to do something that's different. My HR career was founded in talent acquisition. It's where I learned to hustle, to negotiate, to agitate, to frankly be hired or fired based on the delivery of a number when I was an external. I just can't stress enough for anyone, particularly if you're early in your career, thinking this probably isn't something I want to stay with. Like, don't worry, you are learning some incredible skills.
Rob, wonderful to have you on the show, buddy.
Brilliant to be on the show, Sam. I'm an avid listener, so great to be on.
Hey, thank you. It's good to find one. I think for people who don't know who you are, it'd be great to just get a high-level introduction of who you are, and then we'll dive into a bit more of your career journey, because I think that's really fascinating. But just, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, in terms of who I am, I'm a very busy dad of three. I'm a supporter of Aston Villa Football Club. I'm a consumer of all things personal development, personal growth. I live, breathe, eat, sleep, podcast, books. I love to stretch and challenge myself, and passion for food, passion for cooking. Like to spend my weekends with people, busy household, lots of music. And I think life is there to be enjoyed. So that's who I am. In terms of what I do, I'm working for Merlin Entertainments. So we're the business that owns Legoland, London Eye, 160 attractions around the world, massive growth in the US and APAC, and a super, super exciting business to be in. We're creating the greatest company to work and play, and I'm super proud to be playing a part of that journey. And my role there is I'm global head of learning and leadership.
Nice. I think that's got to be one of the best intros to date. And I love all the little insights into your personal life as well. And what a great time to be a Villa fan. Hey, an amazing squad, great manager, beaten by Munich. There's one for the history books. You were there.
I'll tell you what, Sam, I was there, and I about 7 years ago, I wrote down a list of all the things I'd like to achieve in my life and do in my life. And one of them was go and watch Villa play in the Champions League with my dad. And it was one of the ones when I look back and I thought, I've got very little control over that. I mean, I can buy the ticket, yeah. But actually interesting, when Villa got into the Europa Conference last year, I thought about that. And I thought about, if we do qualify for the Champions League, the only way I'm going to get a ticket is if I go to the Europa Conference games and get some booking history there. So it's another one off the list.
Unai Emery, hey, he's done a real job there for fulfilling your dream. In the pre-game, we talked a bit about your career journey. I thought, fascinating and kind of really does build up into your role now and your ambition and the way you think about things. So we'd love to talk through just your journey to the point where you are today.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to start at the beginning, but I mean, listeners, don't worry, because I'm going to get to the point really brief, and I won't do the middle bit. But my career started in retail banking. I joined the grad scheme at Lloyds TSB, and I did it like a lot of people at that age. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't even know the arena in which I wanted to operate. And I kind of figured that if I go for a job at a big company on the grad scheme somewhere, then hopefully I could find something, along the way. So I applied for Lloyds TSB, got on the grad scheme, and my first role there, I was a lending advisor. So it was a frontline facing role. I had customers, and I discovered, I thought I discovered I had a talent for sales, because my sales figures were great. I started to come top of my branch sales in the area, and then I was top 10 nationally, and I was thinking, God, this is going really well. I got a promotion. I started to look after the assets or the accounts of wealthier clients in a role called a personal choice manager. So I got another promotion where I started to look after other managers and do more sales management. And then I got my first, what I'd say, it felt like a big break. I was given the opportunity to manage a bank, and I was only a few years into my career. I had a team of 30. My gran used to clean banks, and I remember sitting on a chair spinning around on a manager's chair and thinking that was really cool. My gran was cleaning the bank, and now here was me. Actually, I had my own spinning chair in my own office, and I was thinking, this is great. Life is good. And then something interesting interesting happened. It just stopped being so great. I stopped performing. I went from being the kind of the bright young thing that was going to be the next director into just an average bank manager that was mid-league tables, not particularly highly regarded. And I went in to ask for a promotion because I'd had them quite regularly. And the area director said, well, show me your sales figures. Yeah. And that was her way of saying just no way. And I just remember going through a year of just, I wouldn't say it was abject misery. I still got pleasure from the people side of things, but I just didn't enjoy it. And I spoke to another bank manager at the time who I confided in. He was a friend of mine. And I said, well, I'm not having much fun. I don't enjoy this anymore. And he said, I hate it. I hate it as well. And I said, well, why are you doing it? Why are you still doing it? Because he'd been doing it for like 20 years. Yeah? He'd been doing it for a long, long time. And he said, well, Rob, the pension is really, really good. And if I leave, then I lose the pension. And I remember thinking in that moment, I may not know what I want, but I know what I don't want. And just that knowledge of, I don't want to be here at his age. He was like mid-40s at the time. I don't want to be in my mid-40s in a role where I'm hating it, but I'm sticking around and feel stuck because of the pension. It created a reaction in me. I thought I've got to do something that's different. So I started to get curious, and I started to think about, well, I don't hate the job all the time, and that's interesting. Yeah, we start to look at don't focus on what you hate, focus on the things that you're doing that are more enjoyable. And I thought I like spending my time with people. I'd spent some time interviewing for a role, and I had a vacancy, and I really enjoyed that. And so I enjoyed the recruitment side, and I really enjoyed anything to do with development and developing people. I spent probably too much time on that at the time. So it just gave me a few clues, and I started to open myself to opportunity, and nothing was planned out, but I kept myself open and curious. And when you keep yourself open and curious and you network, you have conversations, things just show up. And I got the opportunity to start at a recruitment company, starting up a banking desk at a pharmaceutical recruitment company. So it was an opportunity to not go in at the bottom. And I was really excited. In my mind, I was going to make my millions there. I was going to set up a banking desk. I'd have dozens of people coming in. I'd get equity in the company. All of this stuff was going to happen. I'd visioned it. I'd manifested it. That's a fashionable thing now, but it was back then. I'd manifested it was going to happen. And then 12 months later, I got sacked. And it wasn't a kind of, we've got to restructure, unfortunately, a classic redundancy. It was a sacking. You're not good enough. You haven't grown the business as we'd like. You're out on your ear. And then that was a real moment thinking, well, what am I then? Because I'm clearly rubbish at recruitment. I didn't like being a bank manager. I wasn't very good at that. By this time I was a bit older in my life. What on earth am I going to do? And, and that's when I realized that I just needed to take stock, and I just needed to probably ditch the ego a bit and just focus on building a craft. And I'd really admired and spoke to people in the pharmaceutical part of the company I'd worked at. And I loved the fact that the people they were recruiting were earning really good money because they spent years building their craft and spending time developing their skills. And I thought, well, I just need to start again. So I started again at a big American recruitment company, and I was sat alongside grads. I sat alongside people with no experience, which was difficult for me, big drop in salary, etc. And I started again, and within a year or so, I got an opportunity to recruit into Tesco. I actually got I won a contract at Tesco, and I loved it. I loved the business. I loved the buzz. I loved the fact they were growing. I loved the energy when I was actually physically in the business, and I got the opportunity to then go and work for Tesco and to start my HR career. So that's when my HR career actually began about 12, 13 years ago at Tesco headquarters in the recruitment team. And I did 5 or 6 different roles in 5 years there. Started recruitment. I did a talent role. I did a reward role. I did a HR project role. And then I moved into learning and development. And as soon as I moved into L&D, I thought, wow, this is L&D and talent is my space. I just felt like I belong. I loved it. So that plenty more to tell, but that kind of gets you from where I started to where I am now.
And I love it. And I love the honesty on where it's just not worked, and that kind of feeling of needing to start again. And I like that kind of view on life as well, in terms of you might not find your perfect fit at any stage of your or it can happen at any stage of your life. It's probably a better framing. Hopefully everybody finds it at one stage in their life, but the reality is, when you find that area, when you find that thing that you're really passionate about, really lean into it, really think about what are the skills that you've obtained over your career, how does that then feed into it, both personally and professionally, and how can you double down and then hone your craft and be the expert in the room. So tell me then, like when you're now in the learning and development space, what's the like key anchors for you? How do you think about delivering projects, programs in the context of your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I exist in my role at Merlin to help the business deliver its business strategy through its people. That's why I'm in the role that I do, and to do that, we need great leaders. Leadership is so key. It is in all levels, across all levels. It is in all organisations, and particularly I have to say frontline leadership. You know, people that frontline manage people in parks and then centres and attractions to get them to be smiling for customers. They're really tough roles. You know, 9-10 hours a day operating rides, you know, with breaks in between. Merlin is a wonderful place to be. It's a wonderful place to play. You're part of, I think, the greatest company in the world. And yet, actually, the reality is, you know, they're tough jobs. And so to support people and keep them motivated and keep them smiling with customers and playing with kids and all the things that, you know, that create magical memories for our guests, it's so critical. So that frontline management is really critical. And I firmly believe that if you're a thoroughly good human being, you're a thoroughly good manager. So you might not know all the models, you might not have much experience, you might not have led big teams, you might not have done any of that. But if you come at it from a space of, I care about the fact that this person I manage is you know, the most important person in other people's lives. You know, the experience people have with their managers will determine how happy they are through the day, and will determine how happy they are in their lives. And they're such critical roles. And if you come at it from a space of caring and compassion and kindness as a manager, you're going to be a good manager. Oh, and by the way, there are great tools and techniques and coaching programs and feedback models. There's loads of stuff as well. But let's approach it from a deeply human perspective. So in direct answer to your question, I take an approach where, you know, great people make great employees. So if we can just help people, encourage people to be great, they will then be curious. They will then find the tools they need and support they need to be even better at what they do. They will then care, and in so caring, they will develop their skills and hone their craft and do all the things that we want them to do to create great employees of Merlin. So, you know, I also, probably the second part to that is, I do believe that, you know, great people have bad days and great people have bad months and great people have bad years. And I think that everyone has talent, everyone has capability, everyone has potential. And sometimes we're so razor focused on some very, very specific objectives that we've set people that we miss their unique greatness. So giving people an opportunity to really bring the part of themselves that really shines into their day jobs is absolutely critical. So, you know, that's another thing I'm passionate about, is giving people an opportunity to tap into their strengths and their energies and bring that to their role as well.
And I love it. And it's like, it's so altruistic in a way, of like this view that, you know, you could put it on an inspirational poster somewhere in any room of, like, you know, everybody's great. Everybody's got this opportunity. Everybody can be excellent. And I love that view of the world. And I don't want to take away from that, because I do firmly believe it as well. You know, I think everybody in the right environment, regardless of background, regardless of experience, can flourish. And they need to find the thing which gives them the energy, right, that drives them forward. A bit like your story of where you lost that energy, you lost that passion a bit of what you were doing. I think putting my hard exec hat on of thinking about business outcomes, you know, there are some KPIs, there are some deliverables which you frankly just need to be able to deliver. And part of that's, you know, direction, part of that's leadership, part of that's the environment that you're in. There's a number of variable factors that can influence it. But the factor that can often influence it the most is that individual's performance against their own goals, and how that then feeds into, you know, each one of the other areas. So how do you strike that balance between, I suppose, this more rose-tinted view of everybody can be, and then this is me being combative, not my own opinions, but how do you balance that kind of altruistic view of everybody can be the best self, everybody can get to this, you know, unique place of excellence and find their niche, find their area of specialism, to we've got to hit these sales targets, we've got to get to these outcomes, we've got to be able to deliver this project, this new park delivery, this new geo expansion, etc. So yeah, how do you think about balancing, hey, somebody might have a bad year, but that bad year impacts the business? How do you balance individual excellence, altruism, and business outcomes?
So I think that's a great question. It's the but the bullseye question, isn't it? And I think there's a few things. I think firstly, if people have got some degree of agency over their roles, they are more committed to them. Yeah, so if people can bring part of themselves to what they do, they will naturally get more enjoyment from it, and they will naturally do better. So, to give you a very specific example, in Merlin, we want people to speak to our guests. We want people to talk to children. We want people to bring fun and enjoyment to our guests, because they've made a big investment coming to our parks. It's a massive day out for them. It could be the highlight of the year for them. We want to make the magic happen. Well, if we can encourage our people to be their brilliant selves, so rather than give them kind of really static models to engage people, we actually just encourage them to be their brilliant selves when they're showing up and talking to people, and then I think that helps them. But I also think, speaking more widely, I'm not a big fan of traditional performance management, because when we talk about performance management, we say, well, we've got a very clearly defined set of objectives here, and we're going to hold you to them. And what we lose is the individual brilliance of people to bring themselves to the objective. So I remember hearing from a chap called Ben Morton, who's got a great podcast on leadership, and he speaks about in the military, when you give orders in a war situation, you don't just go and say give an order, for example, to go and take that hill, because if you do that and you go to the hill and there's 5 times more enemy there than you thought, you're all going to get killed. So what you say is go and take that hill because of the strategic importance. You explain a bit about the background, and that then gives individuals judgment at a time when they approach it, where they will back down if they need to, or not, or proceed if they're able to. And I think it's a bit like that with performance management. You want to give people opportunities to bring themselves and their judgment. They will naturally enjoy that more. And at the same time, so that's the second thing. And then thirdly, we have to recognize that, as a business, we survive, and businesses to survive to support their customers, to serve their customers, and ultimately we need to deliver the numbers, and companies need to deliver the numbers. And there are some things involved with that are less enjoyable. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to spend some of your time doing something that, you're not so keen on. I spend some of my time in budgets. I spend some of my time in really difficult conversations with stakeholders. I have to challenge, I have to agitate. The role of any great senior leader and HR leader particularly is to agitate, and that's something you either enjoy or don't, and I don't, but it's important. But at the same time, it's something that's necessary to do the job well. So I think we have to face into the fact that, like, work cannot always be 100% enjoyable and fun all the time. But when you zoom out a little bit and say, actually, was that a really great week? Have I got to Friday night earning that glass of wine? Because the challenges I faced during the week, I faced into them, and I didn't like them, and I didn't enjoy them all, but I faced into them, and I've grown. And then I reach Friday thinking, I have earned this glass of wine tonight, or this beer, or this whatever your poison is. And I think there's a bit of that as well, is that challenging times are there to stretch and grow us. We can't avoid them just because we want to enjoy life. Part of the enjoyment is actually the challenge.
Yes, yeah, and I love that as well. And I love that kind of piece of friction. I think that's important. And like, as a business, for HackerJob, one of our core operating principles is empower people to do the best work of their career. And I do love the freedom and the autonomy in roles. And, you give people, the option to think about change and to think about reaching objectives and why you're doing something. And in fact, maybe the objective is completely wrong. And I think that challenge is important. To carry on the kind of football connection from earlier, I think one of the greatest managers of our era, Ancelotti, he always describes, the way in which he sets up incredibly successful football teams. And it's, some people have got dedicated roles that they can't deviate from. And then when it gets to the attacking flair at the front, he almost gives no direction, is the way that he describes it. He just lets people be free, for the art of football and for the judgment in the moment in time and everything else. So I quite like that balance between things you don't want to do, like tracking back, and things that you want to do, like having the individual flair. And obviously that's a highly successful sports team. And I like that military example as well, because sometimes, just following a road blindly where you can see it's going to have an abject impact on your position is not necessarily a good thing. You want to be able to create a culture where somebody can challenge and say that. But equally, you don't want too much autonomy when somebody's running payroll and someone just decides, we're going to change. Actually, do you know what? if our business objective is to be profitable, I've just cut everybody's salary by 10%, in his payroll. So I think there's always got to strike that balance. But
and on that, Sam, actually, and that's such a great. I love that Ancelotti. I hadn't heard that, and I love that. That really rings true. But I also think you want the right people doing payroll, and I think that's really really key, because see, I have been the person who's been metaphorically bashed over the head for a sales figure every single day. At the bank we used to do something called Grab a Granny Day, where you would want to get our insurance sales products up. So you would go after people who are in their 60s and 70s. Now that for me, I would never do that now. And it used to really grate at me then, just thinking this just feels wrong. It's horrible. It's so disrespectful. But the reality is, to some people, it was their favorite day because it was a challenge and they loved it. And well, great. Get the right people doing these things. And this is a thing. There's a space for all of us. There's somehow the world has been, it's incredible how the world has been made to have people who some people just love doing things other people would hate. So get the right people doing the right things, and then more people, everyone's having fun then.
Yeah, and I love that. And also, again, there's going to be things which you don't like doing. There's going to be things that you don't enjoy every week. I love the idea. A chap called Alex Iron shared it with me, of this like calendar setup, and you essentially put every meeting that you've got, recurring or non-recurring meeting, and you put, did that meeting give me energy, or did it sap energy from me, or was it energy neutral? And then how can you make it so that it's energy positive each time you do it? And sometimes there's going to be meetings you just need to have that are going to be energy negative, right? And you're just going to need to accept that, and then fill up the energy cup again with something that's really empowering afterwards, to kind of balance it.
Yeah, and then also, what if this is going to be an energy neutral meeting? What do I need to bring to that? Why am I here? And actually, what is it that I'm going to bring to turn the neutral into a positive? Absolutely, we all have a role in that, and I don't think we can play too passive a role in that either.
And then I think, for the listeners, we spend a lot of time speaking about talent acquisition. I think the role of talent acquisition and people teams is broadening. I think the gel between learning and development, between succession planning, like talent attraction, is all going to come together into a single people function, would be my guess, over the coming years. And it has done in many organizations already in terms of that collaboration. Where do you see that? How do you see that marrying up? How do you see that partnership with talent acquisition? Like where do you think there's scope for growth? What do you see that's working well already?
If I can answer that in two ways, Sam. First up, I'm an enormous fan of talent acquisition as a function that can sharpen your people skills like no other. My HR career was founded in talent acquisition. It's where I learned to hustle, to negotiate, to agitate, to frankly be hired or fired based on the delivery of a number when I was an external. And I just can't stress enough, for anyone, particularly if you're early in your career, thinking this probably isn't something I want to stay with, like, don't worry, you are learning some incredible skills there. So that's the first thing I'll say, is I think talent acquisition, and I advise a lot through a side project I have called Unlock Your Legend. I speak to a lot of people actually in talent acquisitions, recruitment, particularly external roles, who are thinking I might want to go and do something else. But I also speak to people early on in their careers and who are not sure what they do. And I think that's a great place to start, because the skills you learn. So that's the first thing, is just to shout out to everyone in the talent acquisition community. You have got,
and if ever you want a sign that talent acquisition is shining a light, just as you were talking about how great it is as a career, the light started beaming in there. That was perfect cinematic timing. Sorry, yeah, your part two.
That's great. I love that. And then the second thing is that when I was in talent acquisition at Tesco, and this is in 2011, that there was the part of it that made me want to think about doing something else was that it all stopped when they joined, and it would then get handed over to other functions in HR that would cope with the onboarding, that would cope with the the career journey, etc. And I wanted a bit more than that. And actually, I think that's how the talent acquisition functions have emerged. With the fact that it's now talent acquisition, it's not recruitment. I think there's just we look at the employee journey in its entirety now, and everything from interviews being really rich sources of data for people you're hiring. What are the edges? What are those things they're going to need to support and develop? Talent acquisition has got key role to play in that. Coming in on day one, you are never put through the ringer like you are through the interview process. And that's incredibly rich sources of data that talent acquisition teams have. But they need to be proactive with it. Yeah, they need to be the ones that really do something with that, as we have, and I have at previous businesses I've worked for. So, right the way through to the end, the succession planning, the fact people might be leaving the organization and going out in the market and seeing what talent's out there. I just think they're integral to all the conversations. So I just think there's naturally a coming together of these functions, because nothing is in isolation. The employee journey is it's a continual flow. It's a continual process. And the more in harmony talent acquisition is with learning and development, business partnership, it's like three plates are spinning. They're either spinning separately, in which case no one has any idea what's going on and there's no interconnectivity, and development comes off, it doesn't work properly, and recruitment is a bit hit and miss. But when it's like the interplay between the three creates such a beautiful and seamless employee experience. But I think it's talent acquisition teams need to be proactive with that. They need to be showing what they can do. They need to be involved in projects beyond bringing the people in. And I think it's I think there's so much more of that. There's so much opportunity there.
Yeah, and it's like this is the conversation, and many of the episodes we've had so far, and many of the conversations I'm involved with, is like this increasing role of TA teams, of talent teams, of people teams, recruitment teams, however your org frames it. And I think there is an important distinction as you move into talent functions, as you move into people functions, and that broadening role and remit. And I think your call out there is absolutely right. They should be the ones on the front foot saying, hey, this is what we captured from the interview. These would be the areas where, this individual might need to develop. They've passed all of the tests, they passed all of this, but actually their experience gap is in this area, or their real hunger and passion is in this area. Like, how can we make sure that their pathway delivers on that? And then having the finger on the pulse on what the external audience looks like. Doesn't matter the size of your organization. Your organization could be hundreds of thousands of people. It's going to be a tiny, tiny fraction of the talent that's available in the open marketplace for those types of roles, unless you're Madden Tussauds and your Waxworks, where you guys have basically got them all. But I think in general crafts, it's going to be a tiny fraction. So then how can you lean on that part of the business to give you insights of the skills that are available, the understanding of the broader market, the different ways of deploying skills, whether that's contract, whether that's mergers, acquisitions, etc., to get to those business goals, to tie it back to your original point there. I think it's crucial. Great call out.
And I think that the opportunity with skills and growing skills across the organisation, skills and capabilities, I think you're right to call it out, because that's an area that has grown enormously. So much opportunity there, and that isn't something that can be done by standalone learning and development teams. That is absolutely joined up. So I think that's another great area to invest in. And anyone listening that there isn't a skills-based approach, and skills isn't really just part of the conversation, that's a wonderful opportunity to kickstart something within your organisation that would make a transformational difference. And that absolutely can be started and should be started by TA professionals and TA functions.
Oh, what a bombshell to end on. I absolutely love that, in terms of like that dramatic shift in the organisation and how you can make a sizable impact. I think we could do 5 hours on skills-based hiring. I've got certainly some thoughts on it. We've certainly had some guests with thoughts pro and against, but I love that kind of breakdown of how we can do it, and I think a wonderful end. And thank you so much for being on the show, Rob.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's great to be on the show. Look, if anyone's got any questions, any thoughts, or want to reach out, then absolutely do. Feel free to do so, either through Unlock Your Legend or drop me a note from a LinkedIn profile. But it's been a real pleasure to be on here and speak to you, Sam.
Yeah, wonderful. You bring an excellent energy and view on the world. We need more people like you, Rob. Thanks for being on the show.
Same to you. Cheers, Sam.